come to now the conclusion of this conclave. And before we move on to our much awaited segment, let me now, friends, bring to you a special guest of the day to share his expert views. And let me welcome Mr. Nitish Bhasin, Chief Sales Officer, Table Space. As part of the leadership team, Nitish is in charge of leading the sales effort by expanding the company's footprint with large MNCs as well as to grow Table Space geographical presence. Nitish has over 23 years of experience in the office real estate advisory and strategic consulting domain. Previously, Nitish held multiple leadership positions with JLL, including leading their most profitable office leasing business across India and its sales effort across the sector, where he transacted over 50 million square feet of grade A office space on behalf of corporates. He is also well known as the lead advisor in representing several Fortune 500 companies in India, including as the lead deal maker in two of the three largest office leasing deals the country has ever seen. So, Mr. Bhasin, I hand it over to you now. You joined us and you must have listened to what our other panel members had to say about commercial real estate and where the co-working segment is going on. So taking over from there, I give it to you. All yours.
Thank you, Sapna. That's a pretty long introduction, but I think it's been a very interesting session hearing so many industry leaders speak about, it's actually thought leadership based on all the experience they've had. And as we move forward in 2022 and 23, it's very interesting to see that how this is going to evolve. Lots of unanswered questions. Directionally, there is a lot going on. So I just want to maybe talk about for about 10 minutes as to, a little bit about what I feel, the whole Flex story is all about, and, how co-working and managed office has a role to play in it. In this entire story, one thing I wanted to mention is that this whole demand for Flex, it's everywhere. It's not just real estate. It's everywhere. I mean, if you speak with a head of HR for most large and mid-sized companies, flexibility is the #1 question being asked of them. And real estate is no different. We've seen in the last 6-7 years, the advent of flex office, and it has evolved and it continues to evolve. And this evolution is not going to stop. And you see co-working and managed office, they got created from this need for flex. And in the story of flex, as an occupier today, given so many occupiers across the world and specifically in India, for them, flex has a very different meaning from a traditional office space. It could be turnkey workspace where, it's just bespoke to the client. It's need-based, it's to build the brand, the culture. And it's flexible in many other ways for the company because they don't have to do it. Or it is short-term space. So not turnkey for a long period, but the same thing as much as possible close to turnkey, but for maybe a 2 or a 3 year or less than that period. And that's what, how we sort of realized that managed office was the solution for that type of flexibility. And then, of course, co-working. Obviously, the co-working story was the one which took off first up. And in that co-working story, it's ad hoc, it's individual access to single locations or a network of locations. And it is very different from a managed office solution. And then eventually, I think in the future, we're going to see workspace on demand, where it's literally down to the lowest common denominator, which is individual desk or a meeting room by the hour, by the day, by the week. And then we learned through COVID as work from home is a very, very serious type of flex. And earlier it was never taken as seriously. But, IBM, I remember, were one of the pioneers in working from home and wasn't really successful, but they started the work from home concept way, way, way many years ago. So if you see a occupier or a user, for them, flexibility of space has evolved and into a spectrum of choices: traditional office, turnkey, short-term, managed office, co-working memberships, And then what we are going to see in the future, workspace on demand, and then of course, work from home. So the point to note here is that today, as an office user, the office user who was used to coming to the office back in Jan 2020 is going to be very different from the post-COVID office user of Jan 22, or let me say 2022 and beyond, as people start getting back to office in a post-COVID environment. I think a lot has been said about, return to office. And I think the answer lies, and no occupier really has cracked it, but the direction is clear. The reasons for return to office, I read a recent survey as to, what are the reasons for return to office? Socializing came as the number one connect. A lot of CXOs, spoken with over the years and especially the last 2 years, have said is that the attrition rates, we all know the attrition rates Amit spoke about in the previous session, the attrition rates are the highest in companies, 25-30%, and these are with top-notch brands. And the inability to socialize and connect with the brand is a big reason for this disconnect. Today, you have employees who have choice. Back in 2021, they said, oh, our employees are 95-98% productive. Sure, they are, but there was no control on, how they're able, or there was this disassociation with the brand. And when that got established, things like attrition has a direct impact on that. And we all know that the cost to rehire is 60%. So there is a very big linkage in all of these things to the office, which is very core to, this conversation, today. Brainstorming, internal meetings, focused work. In Mumbai, people live in much smaller houses. It's very difficult to work from a focus perspective. Internal meetings, just that, touch and feel and being across the table with your team is so different. It's just difficult to just get things done on video. Client meetings, vendor meetings, where do you do that? Office tech. So the technology which is available in the office. We all know in India, connections are not very easy in lots of locations, even today. So all of these reasons are very important as we look at return to office and what sort of a percentage of people will want to get back to the office. So there's this flexibility story, there's return to office is going to play out. And then there is a story of how co-working or managed office is going to play a role. I think what one thing is going to be very important for most co-working or managed office operator is to look at, we had this conversation a bit, a couple of sessions ago on value, experiential, and it would vary. It will vary city to city, company to company, location to location. Some companies will say, cost is important, but, de-densification is very important as well. We know for a fact, and the stats are there, that the average space per person global in terms of usable area is around about 140 square feet. That's a global average. In India, it's 95 square feet per person. And this is, I'm talking tier 1 grade A office space. It's lower if you get grade A, grade B, but I think you will see, and we are primed right now in India to see that as we go hybrid way of working, that 95 square feet per person will more gravitate towards the average with the world is, and that average, global average, will also increase. So with that in mind, I think co-working players as well as managed office players have a question to ask themselves, is that what role are we going to play in ensuring that flexibility is sort of, what interventions are we going to make so that the flexibility is portrayed in our offices? It's going to be a journey. I don't think there's going to be a one size which fits all, but through experience, through a lot of data and tech in offices, I think companies over a period of time will do these surveys, will figure out that what is the right formula for them. And also today you see a lot of companies, what they do is that they go to their team leads and they started saying that, hey, listen, could you speak to the team and tell us what they like to see in the office? That never used to happen. It used to be the corporate real estate, the business head, or maybe the head of finance, along with an agent who would decide office space for multiples of people. Today, that's changing. People are valuing feedback. People are valuing what they want. And in the war for talent, as you see, attrition rates being the highest in the country, and more work coming to India, I think India is going to be looked at by the world as a leader in this space. So very interesting times. I myself am very excited to see how this plays out. But thank you very much for inviting me and for this short break. And as Sapna mentioned, we have this important and exciting awards session, which is right now. I just want to make sure that as partners and as sponsors with Realty co-working, this year Table Space has chosen not to send in nominations for awards, being such partners. But I do wish Realty Plus and all the participants the very best of luck.
Thank you so much, Nitish. One question that, how you mentioned about a lot of changes that are happening in, the entire office spaces. You mentioned even the leadership is now changing and involving the feedback from the workers, what kind of office space that they would like to have. How are co-working operators evolving their products in terms of price mix to, and the product mix to meet the evolving demands?
Yeah, I think, all of the points which Nitish and Karan and Amit brought up, in these sessions, because they are the people who are seeing, in the front and forward of this. I think the operators are learning a lot from, feedback from occupiers. I think one of the things which I think is a done and accepted is EHS, health and safety. That's just not, I don't think it's negotiable anymore. It's just like, when we had the unfortunate incident in the mid 2000s in Mumbai, we saw every hotel, every public place have, checks, they just completely check you for any metallic or your bags, yourself. And today it's a norm, we live with it. And the same way, EHS and compliance, whether it's, sitting based on social distancing, whether it's coming to the office, sanitization, washing your hands, wearing a mask, these things, they may reduce, but they're not going to go away for a while. So that's one big change I think we've already seen with a lot of the co-working operators. I think the second change we're seeing is that, value over price. And I think people, or especially occupiers, are going to start giving much more importance to value over price. It's also evolving. You'll see some of the larger names, the bigger corporate occupiers who really have a lot of care and put employee at the well-being at the top of everything in their organization, who will be the first to sort of do that. And then eventually they would expect their partners in co-working and managed office to just follow through on that. And that would be a very important piece, as important as cost, I dare say. And probably the last one I would say is innovation in tech. There is so much need for data for companies before they take decisions on real estate. I think operators, the more the tech they put, especially we heard some of the speakers speak about occupancy planning and, how in light bulbs, you have a multitude of sensors, which give a lot of data points. How do you capture the data and how do you report that to decision makers in an organization is going to play a very, very important part. So innovation in all ways, based on a lot of data, which options got, that would be another piece of it. So those three is
okay,
long-winded answer, but
so innovation, health and wellness, and value over price is what Nitish Bhasin is saying are the three main junctures of co-working products and for co-working operators. Thank you very much, Mr. Bhasin, for being here, sharing your valuable views and your wise words with our audience today. I think they have had great day getting all these valuable inputs from the leaders of the industry like you. So thank you so much for being here with us and sharing your time with us.
thank you for inviting me.
Thank you very much.